Alright, in this video I'm going to explain how to change the rear shock on your 2020 or 2019 or probably even 2021 Honda CRF110 fuel injected. I'm an adult rider, so the shock is way too soft that's currently in it. It almost bottoms out when I sit down on it. So in this video, I'm just going to show you pretty much straightforward how to do it without kind of messing around. So the shock I went for is a DNM aftermarket shock. It's adjustable dampener. It's 250 pounds this one's rated for. It suits me pretty well. I'm 100 kilos, so it's not too bad. I think the 350 ones are recommended if you're going to be doing big jumps and whatnot. So I guess the first step is you got to take all the fairings off. Now these are just 8mm bolts holding the seat on. So once you get that off, go on to taking the fairings off the fuel tank. They are another 8mm, so just take them both out. And then there are these plastic grommets. Just get those out with a screwdriver. They come out pretty easy. Pop the tops off, pull them out, and then you can try to get the fairings off, but make sure you don't miss a bolt like I did here. So just get this one out. It's a 8mm. So just pull them off. It's pretty straightforward. This side, or the left side, hides all the battery and everything else in there, which is pretty cool to see. And then there is no third bolt on the right side, so just pull that one off and it's pretty straightforward, so you can get a lot of access to the spring. Take the rear fender off, I guess you'd say, the rear fairing. 10mm bolts, 2 of them, and there's one plastic grommet holding the rear fairing in. Then remove this control module. I don't know what it does, but just get that off, hang it out of the way. And the last bolt you'll have to take out is 12mm, well, 2 of them, two 12mm bolts holding the fairing on via the exhaust. Then when you've done that, move on to the fuel tank. There'll be 3 12mm bolts. Just undo them, move the fuel tank out of the way. You won't need to disconnect any fuel lines or anything like that. Just move it aside so you have a bit of room to take the rear shock out. Now with that done, make sure to put the bike on a stand so then the rear swing arm can fall down when you take the shock out. Now take the top bolt out of the shock. The head on the bolt is a 14mm and the nut on the bolt is a 17mm. When you have removed the top bolt, take the bottom bolt out next. And then the rear shock should just come out pretty easily. Here's a side-by-side comparison. It's awesome that the aftermarket shock is the same length, so you don't have to mess around adjusting anything like that. It just bolts straight in. I've heard of people having to file down the top mount where the shock goes, but I had no issues with clearance or anything like that. Just bolted straight in, and just use the rear swing arm, lift up and down, put the rear bolt in. Put a bit of Loctite on each bolt and then tighten them up. Once you've done that, throw the fuel tank back on, put all 3 12mm bolts back on. Throw the rear fairing on, starting with the 2 exhaust bolts. Make sure the fairing is all flush and everything. Put the rubber grommet back in, then just do the 2 bolts. They're the 2 10mm bolts you have to put back in. Then just start putting it all back together, both grommets on each side of the bike. The 8mm bolts holding the fairings on. And then just reinstall the seat. Here's what the bike looks like where it sits. It sits pretty much the same as it did before, but now here's a comparison of how each adjustment works. This is on the slowest setting. that the rear shock has. So it's, I guess you could say, pretty stiff, but it's not exactly stiff. It's just the rebound's very slow. Here's the fastest rebound, I guess, and you can see it's very bouncy, and it kind of compromises the front shocks because of how light they are. So I just set it to the middle, and it seems to be alright. So I'll just use this for a while and see how it feels. Here's a comparison as well of what the standard shock looked like when I sat on it. It almost bottoms out immediately and just needed to be changed immediately. Anyway, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Play around with the dampener and you'll find what works best for you. Thanks for watching.